After World War II, the peoples of Yugoslavia lived in peace under the grip of an authoritarian leader, Marshal Josip Broz Tito. When Tito died in 1980, the communist system began to crumble, and a new generation of leaders used nationalism to win the hearts and minds of their people. In this climate of fear, Slobodan Milosevic cast himself as the defender of the Serbs, and in 1989, he became president of Serbia.
I don't think he believed in nationalism. He used nationalism to one end and one end only, to keep Slobodan Milosevic in power. And if you foster fear with the other, it's an incitement to violence, and then violence comes very quickly.
When war broke out in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Milosevic supported the Bosnian Serbs, whose army, led by Radovan Karadzic and Ratko Mladic, committed genocide in Srebrenica.
There was never an expectation that presidents and leaders would be arrested.
This tribunal gives the most powerful demonstration that no one is beyond the reach of international justice.
Slobodan Milosevic became the first head of state to be tried for war crimes, the start of a new era for international justice. The disintegration of Yugoslavia began in 1991. The Yugoslavian National Army, dominated by Serbs, attacked the republics of Slovenia, Croatia, and Bosnia, which were seeking independence. More than 130,000 people died, and more than 3 million lost their homes. Most of the war crimes were committed in Bosnia and Herzegovina. One of the member states of Yugoslavia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, was home to 3 ethnicities. The majority were the Muslim Bosniaks, followed by the Orthodox Christian Serbs and Catholic Croats. When the country became independent in 1992, the Bosnian Serbs refused to live in a multi-ethnic country dominated by Bosniaks and Croats, and so formed their own state. They elected a nationalist leader, Radovan Karadzic, as president and took up arms against the internationally recognized Bosnian government. The troops were commanded by a former general of the Yugoslav National Army, Ratko Mladic. The Serb troops swiftly took control of much of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Bosnian Muslims, the Bosniaks, and the Bosnian Croats were expelled from the conquered areas or killed. The media called this ethnic cleansing.
Now, in any war, civilians are part of what the military call collateral damage. Civilians die. They're not the main target. But in Bosnia, they were the main target. The target was to drive those who were not Serbs out of areas which the Serbs wanted to control. In May 1992 was I sent into Bosnia, and then I was first in Sarajevo. That trip, if I look back on it now, it was as if you were living in a dream. Because Serbs controlled the mountains overlooking Sarajevo, they could snipe down streets. And you immediately saw people running. Nobody walked. Everybody ran. Many of my colleagues were hit and some of them killed. But I think the world got to see, and the journalists did their job in showing what was going on there. And then it's up to others to pick up on that. But the governments of Europe and the government of the United States sat back and essentially took the decision, we are not going to intervene in this war.
Ceasefires and political talks have led nowhere and won't until the Western world proves it has a true commitment in ending this war.
Il y avait cette habitude quotidienne de voir à la télévision Sarajevo sous des tirs d'artillerie, et ça devenait presque une routine. Là où le choc a été quand même particulièrement fort, c'est quand sont arrivées les premières images des personnes qui étaient retenues dans des camps, décharnées, derrière des barbelés. Et là, il y avait ce sentiment de revivre des images de la Deuxième Guerre mondiale en couleur, à 1 heure d'avion, 1 heure et demie d'avion de Paris, et que ça appelait bien évidemment à une volonté de justice.
Can you tell me anything about the conditions in which you are being kept here, or is it difficult?
I'm not sure that I'm allowed about that. You know, can you understand me?
We'd seen those images out of Bergen-Belsen, Dachau, and the other concentration camps when they were liberated in 1945. That had an impact, a cry of, we can't be seen to be doing nothing. And then the UN came up with the idea of we should start a war crimes tribunal.
Un tribunal international pour juger des crimes de guerre commis dans l'ex-Yougoslavie, c'est la décision historique prise hier par le Conseil de sécurité de l'ONU. C'est la première fois qu'un tel tribunal sera mis en place depuis le célèbre procès de Nuremberg.
Today we begin to cleanse the hatred that has torn apart the former Yugoslavia. A few months ago I said, this will be no victor's tribunal. The only victor that will prevail in this endeavor is the truth. We must now move without delay to the next steps, particularly the appointment of the prosecutor and the selection of judges. Finally, of this we are certain. The tribunal must succeed for the sake of the victims and for the credibility of international law in this new era. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Until the end of the latter part of the 19th century, the concept of ending wars in any other way than by taking the spoils of victory was never even thought of. You had the beginnings of international justice with the Nuremberg trials. Imperfect, because they only looked at one side of the conflict, but nevertheless they were very efficient in bringing people to justice quickly, decisively, pictorially. Go and ask your friends, show them a picture of Goering sitting in the dock, 90% will know what it is. And then it stopped because of the Cold War. America and Vietnam. What was happening with Agent Orange and napalm and carpet bombing? They were war crimes. Has America been brought down by that? Those of us who protested didn't go around shouting, lock them up, or try them, or send them to the Hague. We said, stop the war, because there was no judicial process into which you could send people. Yugoslav Tribunal has completely changed the way people think, because now if you show a conflict, they're likely to say, well, send him for trial, because there's an expectation that bad people doing bad things in horrible conflicts get tried. But that's only 25 years ago.
In 1993, The Hague became the home of the new tribunal. Judges, investigators and prosecutors were recruited from across the world to bring war criminals from former Yugoslavia to trial.
There were people from the United States, and from Great Britain and Italy and all over the world. And the atmosphere among those folks was high energy and a certain amount of excitement. Though excitement with a bit of a smile, because no one thought we would be able to do anything.
Meanwhile, the war continued in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Bosnian government formed the Bosniak-dominated army. Bosnian Croats had also formed their own military units. It was the civilian population as a whole that suffered the most.
During the war in Yugoslavia, I think it was inconceivable to any of the major actors there, but to anyone in the rest of the world, that any of those people would ever be held accountable. I talked to both Radovan Karadzic and Ratko Mladic and mentioned the fact that, they were going to start an international war crimes tribunal for Yugoslavia, and did they not both fear that they would be made defendants there? And they wiped it away. Absolutely, they did not take this seriously. Mladic said, no, what I'm doing is I'm defending my own people. That will stand up in a court of law.
Craignez-vous d'être déféré, d'être traduit en justice, jugé par les tribunaux internationaux de la Haye pour crimes de guerre?
In the Bosnian countryside, the ethnic cleansing continued. Many Bosniaks, removed from their villages, found refuge in Srebrenica, a small enclave surrounded by Serb troops. Around 40,000 people gathered there, isolated from the rest of the world.
Taj dan shvatila sam gdje sam dovela djecu, gdje smo došli. Sve okolo je ponovo. Mi smo došli u jedan začarani krug odakle nemamo izlaza. Nemate šta jesti, nemate šta piti, nemate... Šta ćete?
In early 1993, a United Nations contingent was sent to Bosnia and Herzegovina to bring humanitarian aid to the civilian population.
I kad je prvi konvoj u Srebrenicu došao, vjerujte da su meni suze tekle ko kiša kad sam vidjela kamione. Dođite u situaciju da se bar neko sjetio da postojite tu posle godinu dana. Kad se otpišete 100% sami sebe i svoju djecu i svakog otpišete i onda se pojavi neko, što kažu, svjetlo na kraju tunela i ipak probudi vam nadu da ćete preživjeti na neki način, da će to sve biti bolje.
You went in with the very first convoy of the UN. The commander, General Morillon himself, went into Srebrenica to see the situation. They surrounded Morillon, wouldn't let him leave, and then he declared that it was going to be a safe haven. The moment you use those words, you've put everybody on the spot, because the UN is all of us. It's all the governments of the world. We've declared that place then to be safe and under UN protection. Well, clearly it was a false promise.
You are now under the protection of the UN forces.
And when Blue Helmets came, my friends and other boys were running around them. I remember the talks, the discussion amongst people, amongst my parents, that Blue Helmets came, if not to protect us, but at least to help us. And but it was wrong. Later, I will realize that they came here just to observe our tragedy, unfortunately.
The troops of the UN Blue Helmets assigned to protect Srebrenica were outnumbered and badly equipped compared with the Serb forces. After 2 years of siege, in July 1995, General Ratko Mladic started an offensive against the enclave. The Bosniak fighters tried to fight back, but they were quickly overrun by the Serb troops. The UN Blue Helmets put up no resistance.
When the Serb offensive started, Blue Helmets left the checkpoints and ran away to Srebrenica, to their base. They left us alone. We didn't know where to go. We just waited to be arrested or to be killed.
General Mladic asked Dutch Colonel Tom Karemans, who was commanding the UN peacekeepers in Srebrenica, to organize a meeting with Bosniak representatives.
Trebate da položite oružje i svima koji polože oružje garantira život. Trebam da dobijem jasan stav predstavnika vašeg naroda. Da li želite da ostanete ili nestanete? Hoću ja vam čak iskreno da sam slučajno vaš problem. Dobijete ljude koji mogu obezbediti predaj oružja i spasti vaš narod od uništenja.
Svi muškarci koji su bili sposobni smatrali su da jednostavno nisu smjeli, nisu htjeli da se predaju u ruke toj srpskoj vojsci, krenuli su preko šumi.
The father, I remember his words. He's saying to me, it's up to you. You have to make decision where to go, with me or with your mother.
Tada se nije imalo šta misliti. Nije se imalo kad misliti. Više se nije znalo kud će ko. Ja se nisam uspjela sa svojim ni pozdraviti. Kako treba. Nama su samo govorili da žene i djeca idu u bazu i stariji. I tu smo ostali sve dok i sljedeća 2 dana dok nismo sjeli u autobus.
Over the course of 2 days, the Serbs forcibly removed over 30,000 women, children and elderly men to refugee camps in territory controlled by the Bosnian government. However, there was no trace of more than 8,000 men who tried to escape from Srebrenica through the forest.
Personne ne savait ce qu'étaient devenus les hommes. Donc les journalistes qui suivaient les choses depuis 1992 ont immédiatement conclu qu'un homme manquant était un homme mort. Une petite équipe va être envoyée pour enquêter parmi les réfugiés de Srebrenica. J'étais bien évidemment très heureux de pouvoir aller sur le terrain et commencer véritablement à travailler. Nous, on arrive là-bas 10 jours après la chute de l'enclave. Et rapidement, commençaient donc à arriver des gens qui, eux, déclaraient avoir survécu à des exécutions massives. Et nous racontait des scènes tellement incroyables que c'en était presque difficile à croire, tout en sachant que malheureusement, c'était très certainement vrai.
I was at the age of 17. I left Srebrenica with my father, and I just wanted to save my life. We just have arrived in the mass. In that moment, a shelling started. I just tried to take shelter somewhere in the woods, under the trees, and in that moment I lost my father. And I just remember I was calling, but in vain. I never found him. I just remember later the calling and the invitation from the Serbs. They were calling us to surrender, to get out.
Ajde, momci, zvište, dignite ruke uvis samo, ajde! Ajde, brže! Predajte se, momci!
Koliko ih je već izašlo?
Pa izašlo oko 3 do 4 000.
I remember when that we surrendered, that we left the votes and that we get out.
Koliko ste tamo proveli vremena?
Proveli smo 2 dana i 2 noći.
Skroz opojeni je šta? Gde su vam puške?
Nisam imao puške. Ja sam civil.
Civil? Dobro.
Nisam imao ideje.
Ste mnogo uplašili?
Kako se neš uplašiti? Ajde, bolo, ne boj, sam da se bojiš. Ajde, gore, ajde. Ajde, slobodno. Neće, ja se bojiš.
They put us on a meadow near Asphalt Road, and after that, one of them, probably their commander, starting saying, don't worry, everything will be okay. You will be with your families in the next days. You will be put in hangars in Bratunac town, but without dinner. I could feel irony or sarcasm in his voice, and what the food, what the dinner. I recognized the trucks were on the road not far from us. I remember that I was loaded on the last one. I could see a lot of people in the apartments on the balconies, and many of them were looking at us. No one today can say that they didn't know. The truck arrived at the location for mass execution. I could hear fire outside all the time, and in one moment they said to us that leave the truck in groups of 5. People were crying everywhere, were moaning, and I noticed rows and rows of dead bodies in front of me. Everything was happening so fast. It was a matter of seconds. They opened the fire, and I don't remember when I was hit. I was on my stomach, I was trembling, I was shivering. I just heard one of the soldiers saying to the other, "You should check who has a warm body, we should give him 1 bullet more." At that moment, the military boot is in front of my eyes, and I'm closing my eyes at that moment, waiting to be killed. But he replied, and he refused, in fact, saying, "Oh, mother, they are already dead."
A few months after the Srebrenica genocide, in the autumn of 1995, international leaders pressured all parties involved in the war to go to Dayton, Ohio, and sign peace agreements. The new Bosnia and Herzegovina would be made up of 2 autonomous entities, the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Republika Srpska. On behalf of the Bosnian Serbs, the peace accords were signed by their most important ally, the President of Serbia, Slobodan Milosevic.
Hello, we spoke at the London conference. Can we speak later in the afternoon?
We got the very first interview that Milosevic gave. My impression then was of a clever man. I mean, he was able to stonewall with a smile every question that I put from the beginning. Saying, "No, it's nothing to do with me. It's happening in Bosnia." Of course it had everything to do with it. The Bosnian Serb army, who were they paid for? They were paid by the government in Belgrade. But Milosevic played that game cleverly, and the Clinton administration went along with it.
Mr. President, you must turn the pages of this agreement into a real hope for those who have survived this horrible war.
After the peace accords, a NATO-led international coalition was sent to Bosnia. For the tribunal's investigators, it was an opportunity to access the crime scenes.
I didn't know much. When I was assigned to the Srebrenica team, I knew thousands of Muslim men had disappeared after the fall of the enclave and that they were thought to have been executed.
Pour des survivants de crimes de masse, nous en comptons 10. Sur certaines scènes de crimes, il y en a 0. Mais ça n'a pas empêché de pouvoir malgré tout retrouver ces scènes de crime.
And this is basically what we've found.
110 14.5 millimeter shells, 25 empty shells of 7.62 millimeter.
Total number of blindfolds.
117.
Avec un collègue avec qui je me trouvais, on a pu s'infiltrer dans le hangar et faire un prélèvement sur un mur pour s'assurer que des innombrables traces qu'on voyait au mur, il s'agissait bien ou pas de sang humain ou de sang animal. À l'analyse du laboratoire, c'était bien du sang humain.
We knew that General Mladic had commanded the forces that did this. And we knew that President Karadzic was his supreme commander. His title was the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces of the Republika Srpska. So he was Mladic's boss. But we didn't know much else. And we had no documents. We were not able to talk to any Serb soldiers. Nobody knew. Razor Demovic was a soldier in the Bosnian Serb army. His unit, they were assigned to execute roughly 1,700 people from Srebrenica. He took part in that. He felt horrible about that and actually went to the U.S. Embassy in Belgrade and said, I want to admit what I did. I want to be taken to The Hague.
Monsieur Ardemovic, vous pouvez vous lever, s'il vous plaît. Qu'est-ce que vous voulez ajouter comme élément, Monsieur Ardemovic?
Poštovani sude, ja sam to morao da radim. Da sam odbio to da radim, ubili bi mene sa tim ljudima. Kad sam odbijao da radim, rekli su mi, ako ti je žao, stani ti s njima, da ih tebe ubijem.
Bien, Monsieur Ardemovic, remettez-vous, asseyez-vous une seconde, remettez-vous, asseyez-vous une seconde.
Mais la chose la plus importante de toutes que Dražen Demovic nous a amené, c'est son appartenance au 10e groupe de sabotage. Le 10e groupe de sabotage n'agit que sur l'ordre du plus haut niveau de l'état-major de l'armée bosno-serbe.
The UN estimates that more than 8,000 Bosniak men and boys were killed in mass executions in Srebrenica, while those responsible for the genocide were walking free.
Nobody can arrest me in my country.
No.
Nobody can arrest me. And nobody should arrest any of my people, because then there would be many, many dead soldiers, Western soldiers, not because we want them to be dead, not because we would give that kind of order, but because people would defend themselves.
All the international leaders could achieve was Karadzic's withdrawal from political life.
As of this morning, Karadzic is no longer president of Republika Srpska. He has relinquished the office and all powers associated thereto. Madam Plavsic is the temporary acting president.
The new president of the Republika Srpska was Biljana Plavsic, a hardline nationalist who'd been Karadzic's deputy during the war. Once she was in power, the War Crime Tribunal asked her to arrest Karadzic and Mladic and send them to The Hague. But she refused and said she didn't know where they were. In the meantime, in February 1998, Serbian troops were targeting the Albanian population in the autonomous province of Kosovo, including unarmed civilians. The massacres were a stark reminder of the ethnic cleansing that had taken place in Bosnia only a few years earlier. But this time, the international community did not want to stand idly by.
Aggressive nationalism of Mr. Milosevic, rooted in the 30s, not in the 90s, of European politics, must be stopped and will be stopped.
I would just like to remind President Milosevic that NATO stands ready to take whatever measures are necessary. Thank you.
In March 1999, NATO launched airstrikes on Serbia to force Milosevic to withdraw his troops from Kosovo. More than 8,000 Albanian civilians were killed in Kosovo. In May 1999, Milosevic was charged with war crimes.
On May 22nd, I presented an indictment for confirmation against Slobodan Milosevic and 4 others, charging them with crimes against humanity, specifically murder, deportation, and persecutions, and with violations of the laws and customs of war.
But as long as Slobodan Milosevic remained in power, arresting him was impossible. But the opportunity came when he lost the presidential election in 2000. Milosevic refused to concede defeat until an angry mob stormed the parliament in protest. In June 2001, Milosevic was extradited to the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, or ICTY, in The Hague, and charged with war crimes committed in Kosovo, Croatia, and Bosnia. One of the longest and most important trials in the history of justice was about to begin.
Today, as never before, we see international justice in action. This tribunal, and this trial in particular, gives the most powerful demonstration that no one is above the law or beyond the reach of international justice.
Mr. Milosevic, I see that you're not represented by counsel today. Now, these proceedings will be long and complex. Do you want some time to consider now whether you wish to be represented?
I consider this tribunal false tribunal and indictments false indictments, so I have no need to appoint counsel to illegal organ.
Now, do you want to have the indictment read out or not?
That's your problem.
More than 5,000 witnesses testified in front of the War Crimes Tribunal. Among them were politicians, soldiers, and foreign observers. The vast majority were those who survived violence during the war, victims of rape, torture, and genocide.
Nazvali smo iz Haškog tribunala. Pristajem da svjedočim i ja sam rekla da. Nisam razmišljala ništa. Pa idem nešto da radim, da se nešto dešava u mom životu. Ako mogu biti nekom od koristi.
Svečano izjavljujem da ću govoriti istinu, cijelu istinu i ništa osim istine.
Just 20 out of the 161 accused pleaded guilty, even though they'd have been given shorter sentences if they'd done so. Bosnian Serb politician Biljana Plavsic was one of the few who admitted being culpable.
Biljana Plavsic turned herself in to the UN War Crimes Tribunal on Wednesday. She's accused of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity.
suđenje će trajati godinama. Rekli su mi da može da bude doživotna, to otvoreno. I ja sam u sudnicu jednom ušla sa 220 pritisak. I kad sam vidjela, moj advokat kaže, Biljana, ovo jedino možemo na ovaj način riješiti. Priznaj krivicu.
Naše rukovodstvo, čiji sam bila neophodan dio, vodilo je poduhvat koji je za žrtve imao nebrojne nevine ljude. U to vrijeme ja sam olako ubijedila samu sebe da je ovo pitanje opstanka i samoodbrane. Meni je najvažnija odgovornost prema meni samoj. Hoćete li vjerovati? Vrlo dobro spavam.
The trial chamber has to pass sentence on a 72-year-old former president for her participation in a crime of the utmost gravity. On the other hand, there are very significant mitigating circumstances, in particular, the guilty plea of the accused. Let the accused stand. Biljana Plavsic, having given due weight to the factors set out, the trial chamber sentences you to a period of 11 years imprisonment.
Ovdje je jedna međunarodna institucija atakovala na cijelu naciju srpsku sa ovim haškim tribunalom.
Four years after it started, the trial of Slobodan Milosevic was still not finished. Hearings were often delayed as Milosevic's health deteriorated. On the 11th of March 2006, Milosevic was found dead in his prison cell. He died of a heart attack.
His death shook the institution as much as his arrest had made the institution.
While Milosevic was mourned in Belgrade, the ICTY's most wanted fugitives were hiding in Serbia. Radovan Karadzic and Ratko Mladic, charged with genocide in the Bosnian War, were still regarded as heroes.
Something like 5 o'clock one morning, I got a phone call. Radovan Karadzic has been captured. Would you like to prosecute him for the siege of Sarajevo? And I said yes. Karadzic remained a fugitive from justice, and he did that through a very clever disguise as a faith healer, and it was a disguise that worked. The man that was arrested in 2008 looked nothing like Radovan Karadzic. But what was very interesting was when Karadzic made his first appearance in court after his arrest. Everything was shaved off, the hair was short, and the man that he once was back.
Pa od svi ostali protiv kojih sam svjedočila, on je najgori. To je jedan psihopata koji sve što kaže laže.
Da li ste poznavali Osmana Malagića?
Da. To je bio moj djevir.
Pa je nabrojio svu moju familiju, okarakterisao me ko ratničku familiju. I onda sam mu rekla isto da se ne skira puno od ratničkoj familiji. Sve što sam imala, poredio je memorijalni centar ko sardine. Tako da može mirno spavati u Hagu.
In 2011, the ICTY's last fugitive was finally apprehended in Serbia. After 15 years on the run, Ratko Mladic was arrested and handed over to The Hague.
Mr. Mladic,
Would you kindly rise and make the solemn declaration, please?
Ratko Mladic, then I was really surprised because I had also always thought that he would not allow himself to be taken, that there would be a shootout, that he would always have a gun under his pillow, which I suspected Radovan Karadzic wouldn't have or wouldn't know how to use. And yet he allowed himself to be taken.
Jer ja taj sud, Haški sud, Galmatijev sud, ne priznajem, to je NATO tvorevina. To nije sud pravde, to je satanski sud koji sudi nama što smo Srbi, što branimo svoj narod od vas.
Mr. Mladic, I'm cutting you off. Please be seated.
He had 4 years of acting with impunity, killing who he wanted, having his troops rape who he wanted. He knew the tribunal existed. He laughed at it. And so we have Srebrenica and we have genocide. He could have taken 7,000 Muslim men prisoner that could have helped cloud his previous 4 years of murder and rape, but yet he chose to be the monster that he is and kill those people.
Mr. Karadzic, could you please stand? The chamber hereby sentences you, Radovan Karadzic, to a single sentence of 40 years of imprisonment.
Bilo mi je drago i zbog njega što je osuđen, ali bilo mi je drago i zbog mene ako sam mogla da pomognem sa svojim svjedočenjima, ako se nešto moglo da desi, da doprinesi toj presudi.
Mr. Mladic, sit. Mr. Mladic, sit. Mr. Mladic, if you continued like this, we adjourn. Mr. Mladic will be removed from the courtroom. Curtains down. Mr. Mladic will be removed from the courtroom. The chamber finds Ratko Mladic guilty of the following counts: genocide, persecution, extermination, deportation, unlawful attacks on civilians, a violation of the laws or customs of war. The chamber sentences Mr. Ratko Mladic to life imprisonment.
During the history, a lot of crimes happened in this area, but no one was punished or arrested. Now it was for first time happened, and no one can deny that. We have deniers everywhere around, but we have established facts.
I cannot say exactly why I returned here. Probably to say I'm alive, maybe. This is our home. We are not from Mars, we are from here. But I can feel that we are not wanted here, and they just wait for a moment, seemingly to eliminate us again.
Imala sam toliko prijatelja na poslu koji su bili Srbi, s kime smo skupa radili u kancelarijama, koji su dolazili nam kućni prijatelji. Ja slobodno hodam kroz Srebrenicu i idem i obavljam svoje poslove i sjedim u parku i čekam, gledam kad prolaze, on se okreću od mene, ja se od njih ne okrećem. Da li se stide, da li me mrze, to ne bi znala reći, ali uglavnom izbjegavaju svaki kontakt. Ti direktni s kim sam, koji me baš znaju, s kim sam radila, s kim sam se družila, nema drugovanja više.
The International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia's last trial ended in 2017. Since 1996, the tribunal had charged 161 people with war crimes. More than 90 were found guilty. Today, no fugitives remain on the run.
Of course, I would like to say, well, we have done a great job, but the reality is also that we had political support, and if you want international justice to be successful, the international community needs to speak with one voice, which unfortunately is not the case if you look at the world today. Well, impunity is more the rule and accountability more the exception, and this is obviously very disappointing.
After the ICTY, a permanent court was created in The Hague to prosecute war criminals, the International Criminal Court. But many of the world's most powerful nations are boycotting it. The future for international justice does not look good.
It was the United States that played a major leadership role in establishing the tribunal for their former Yugoslavia. However, there was very little American involvement in that war, and so there was very little chance that an American could ever be considered a war criminal. And that was the way things were in 1993. Currently, the U.S. is one of the biggest obstacles right now. They felt that the ICC may prosecute American soldiers.
I don't think there's much chance of getting either the People's Republic of China or the United States of America or federal Russia to agree that it's a good idea to say, yes, okay, we'll put ourselves and everybody else on trial. No. My fear is justice has lost its gloss, its sparkle. The arc of its importance may be on the downward side unless we do something about it.